Good morning, everyone. Today's session, we are discussing the new non-compliance notice that we created. But before we get started, just hello to my co-hosts, Steve and Gerry, just to discuss, obviously the COVID and COVID-19 and continue just trying to stop the spread. Guys, please all wear your mask out in public, nose and mouth covered. Wash your hands with soap, avoid touching your eyes, avoid close contact with people. Cover your nose when you sneeze, and disinfect surfaces frequently. As you know, these different strains are, especially this Delta strain, is quite intense. So please do make sure that we are out there trying to flatten the curve so we do not have an intense fourth wave and we can carry on with business. Gerry, Steve, would you guys take over?
Good morning, guys. Good morning, Lorraine, and welcome to the session. Steve, I don't know if you want to also give us a word of welcome from your side.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time out, and I look forward to a really good session with regards to the new non-compliance notice that's been put together. Again, it's been a bit of a delay. COVID and various things have thrown a spanner in the works, but I think as Gerry goes through it today, everyone will be able to see the value in terms of the document and how it's been embellished. So sit back and relax and enjoy the flight, Gerry.
Right, guys. So I think let's jump right into it. I think the important thing here is to understand that the non-compliance notice as it is on the IOPSA system, and this is what we are showing you right now. Lorraine, just go to the top of the page there. So this is the non-compliance notice that is available on the IOPSA system right now as a support to the plumber in the field. What we have found, or what we have seen when we do audits, is that in a lot of instances, the client is not being notified while the plumber or the installer is on site after non-compliances, and therefore he doesn't have the opportunity to make the decision whether he wants to rectify these non-compliances. So we need to keep in mind that I think it's important for the guys to also have this document handy, ready with them at all times, so that they can inform the consumer on site and then allow him to make the decision. So this is the non-compliance that has been sitting on the system for, well, I see this revision date was in 2018. So it's been sitting there for quite a while. It is available in the shop at 50 Rand download. And once you've downloaded, you can obviously print it as many times as you want. So this, I think, is not a bad idea to have it in all of your vehicles, so that the people can actually complete it and hand it over to the owner. Now, what we have done is we have updated this version of this non-compliance notice. There are one or two small changes, so that will be available as from most probably the first week in September on the system. I know we have spoken about this in the past, but we are now at the final stages where we just need to clean up some of the documents. So all of this will be available, and we've also worked on one for solar as well as heat pump installations. So all of those documents will be available early in September, so just keep an eye out. And then I think it'll make life much easier for you guys in the field, because as I said earlier, we do pick up that non-compliance notices are only being sent to the consumer once the COC is being logged on the system, and that creates a challenge. So if we just run down this one quickly, Lorraine, if you can just go down, there we go. So if we look at this specific document, there's obviously the space for the plumber, the client's name, the property address, the COC that we are referring to. Now, remember that this document does not replace a COC. It is basically an annexure. It's a way or a method to support you and to help you to remember what to look at when we're looking at non-compliances. Then you will also see we have color coding there, critical safety, area of safety, condition of warranties, and eco. So that is just to give an indication what are the critical areas on specific non-compliances, what is in jeopardy here, what can happen, what are the possible outcomes that you can expect when you have those non-compliances on the system. So this document will looks at all the installation areas. And what we have then done is we have created a consumer document which references over to these points. So Lorraine, if you can open that one, that consumer guide one for us quickly. Thanks. So this is the consumer guide, which is connected to the non-compliance notice. So the top is basically very much the same, just the information. And then you will see there that we have got the color coding, critical safety, which is life-threatening, severe injury, damage to property. Terms and conditions, those are the manufacturer's warranties and or insurance claims that may be voided. And then the green is the eco-awareness and comfort, which is an inconvenience for the consumer, energy savings, and possible financial loss. So if we go down, Lorraine, just go down to, okay. So once again there, we are saying that this is not a non-compliance notice, but it is basically just to help you to understand what the non-compliance is about, and also to assist you to be able to explain it to the owner or the user of that system in layman's terms, so that he can also understand where we're coming from. So if we look at the assembly, the first section there, if we look at, let's say, point 1.2, you'll see it's color-coded in blue, so that means it's mainly targeted towards warranties and insurance issues that might be a problem when this is non-compliance. And you can cross-reference this 1.2 to 1.2 on the non-compliance notice. Just go to that one. So if we see, if we look there, 1.2 on the non-compliance notice talks about materials, pipes, fittings, components, and fixtures that must be installed as per the regulation. So if we now go back to the consumer guide at 1.2, there it says, materials, pipes, fittings, components, and fixtures not installed as per the regulation and manufacturer's installation specifications are not adhered to and may result in warranty guarantee claims being repudiated, and it will result in financial loss to the consumer in terms of insurance claims and potential damage to property. So that gives us just a little bit of more information to support you in the field, so that you can explain what does that specific line actually mean to the consumer. What are the consequences he can expect, or what may be the results? So if we go down a little bit more to the TP valve, there we go, 1.5. Go back to the other one, the non-compliance. Once again, there the line only says temperature and pressure valve not installed correctly, and you will see there the red exclamation mark. That is obviously critical safety, and then the manufacturer's warranty that may be voided. So if we refer back to the consumer guide, once again, on 1.5, yeah, as you can see, it's color-coded in red, so it's a critical safety issue. And what we are saying here is the TP valve, also known as the safety valve, is a vital component which protects the geyser and the hot water system from overheating and overpressurizing the system. The absence of and/or incorrect installation of the TP valve may result in property damage and/or serious or fatal injury of occupants, as well as voiding the manufacturer warranty and the possibility of insurance claim being repudiated. So that gives you just a bit more information. I think it's quite elaborate in most of these things. It will support you, it will help you to understand maybe the non-compliance notice yourself. And also it gives you a guide as to how to explain this to your client or to the consumer. What does every heading on that non-compliance actually mean? And as you can see, we cross-reference it back. So every point on the non-compliance notice is cross-referenced in this document to make it easier. So if we maybe go to, let's look at number 3, an expansion control valve, 3.2, not installed on a closed hot water heating system. Once again, the indication there, it's a critical safety as well as warranties. And if we look at 3.2 on our document, There we go. 3.2, the expansion relief is a safety feature or component protecting the system from overpressurizing the system and the hot water expansion. The absence of an expansion control valve may result in the geyser bursting or exploding, causing damage to the property, serious injury, and death of consumers or occupants. This will void the manufacturer's warranty and will result in additional cost to you, the consumer. So once again, as you can see, every point on the non-compliance notice is referenced in this document with an explanation, which I think will make it easier for you to explain, number one, and to number two, to inform the client properly so that he understands what is the reason, why should this happen, or why is it important for me to actually look at this non-compliance and to rectify it. So if we can just go down on the document to the bottom, Lorraine. So you'll see all of the installation aspects have been covered. Then there's obviously also a comments column here. And I think one of the things that we have picked up in recent times regarding electricity specifically, and those that have done the electrical course would realize that one of the things that we need to maybe have a look at is to inform the consumer once we've done the bonding, that to say the bonding has been done. However, please note that this bonding needs to be verified and certified by a qualified electrician. And that's, I think, a standard thing that we all need to put on our COCs as well as our non-compliance notices to inform the client in writing so that he understands that you as the plumber is not a qualified electrician and you cannot verify and you cannot test, and you cannot certify that part of the electrical installation. And I think it's quite an important thing that we need to add in and that we need to focus on going forward. So once again, you can hand this document also over to the client together with a non-compliance notice. Put your comments in there for extra items that might not be listed. And then you can sign it, the consumer can sign it, you can make a copy, then you've got proof that you've handed over the document, the client is aware, and this paves the way for you going forward so that you don't have finger pointing going back or going forward from the client. Steve, that's more or less what I wanted to say. I'm sure you've got a couple of things that you want to add in here as well.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I think, to go through the entire document is going to take us quite a while. But I think the key thing for me is during the course of the last sort of 2 weeks, I've had a couple of complaints come through from clients that have had geysers replaced, as an example. And, the non-compliance is very vague in terms of the explanation. And the assumption is that, if you're doing an insurance claim or whatever the case may be, that, you're going to do the whole upgrade to comply with SANS 10254, etc. But the key component of this was that when the pictures came through, clearly the installations were non-compliant before they started. There were certain requirements in terms of the insurance companies or the body corporates in terms of what they will exactly do, in terms of putting you back in the same position, or et cetera, et cetera. And unfortunately, the plumber was unable to explain to the consumer the reasons behind and why the system should be upgraded, to comply. And it became a little bit of a bun fight. But once we had gone through each and every one of the items, the plumber had noted them, but not noted them correctly. So again, incorrect documentation used, and the time in terms of explaining to the consumer the risks associated with such an installation. And I think we need to remember, and we've all been in that position where the first sort of protocol from the consumer is that, but it's been like that all the time. It's worked. Why do I have to do this? And I think the reasoning behind our putting this document together was to be able to empower the plumber to be able to stand in front of the consumer and provide the details, bearing in mind that the Consumer Protection Act says that the Consumer Protection Act says that we have to advise the consumer in writing and in plain English that they will understand. So again, it is a requirement of being a professional plumber. And I think if we empower ourselves to be able to explain in detail the non-compliances and the reasons why they should be. Again, it will affect your bottom line if it's done in the correct manner. It'll also be able to go back to the insurer to be able to advise them as to, the reasoning behind that. So again, it's not a compulsory document that you have to use, but I think anyone who's been on an audit or conducts audits will find that we see a variety of documents used, and some of them are very good. Some of them are absolutely terrible, but all of them don't actually cover or encompass all of the requirements. There's a couple of items left out. Some individuals think that that's less important than the other. So it does become a bit of a challenge. So again, this is not a compulsory document. I think we've just done it to ease the load on the plumber to be able to cover himself in a compliant manner, meet all the requirements of the standards, and make sure that the client is aware. And that's really what it boils down to. We can't spend their money for them. We can't upgrade every installation and then charge for it. But again, it's for us to be able to advise the consumer in the correct manner. And again, this document will be backed up in terms of the websites, so that if the consumer wants to, they can go and check it for themselves. But again, it's just taking away the risk from you. Bearing in mind that when you've done this and you've done it in the correct manner, basically the liability passes from you, the plumber, to the consumer. They take responsibility for that installation, and it covers you in the event of there being damage or to property or whatever. So I think it's key that we actually follow it. As I say, we've got 2 others that will be coming up. We'll go through each one over the next 2 Thursdays. We will be going through these in detail, and as Gerrie said, they will be on our website to be able to purchase. Well, Lorraine, if you want to add something.
Thanks, Steve. I think just to add from my side, auditing, and this is one of the biggest bones of contention, is the fact that plumbers are not explaining to the consumer in a way that they understand. For us, as a plumber, it's very easy to rattle off terminology and jargon, but when you're a consumer, for you, the hot water comes up, that's all you know. And understandably, as Steve is saying, people are always saying that, this thing was working for years. Well, that's fine and great, but at the end of the day, you need to cover yourself as the plumber. I always tell the story about what happened in border region, where the plumber didn't inform the consumer that they had polycop on the hot water reticulation, and it ended up costing the plumber 150,000 Rand, simply because he did not inform the consumer in a way that she understood and did not hand over his COC and the non-compliance notice. So these documents were created to assist, and we do value your feedback. And obviously, this is not us just trying to punt these documents, but we wanted to make life as simple as humanly possible for the plumbers, that you're not overthinking. Usually what I tell the guys, what I audit them, is that rather do a pre-audit yourself and actually look around your surroundings and look at the document and tick off what is compliant and what's not compliant, so that you're able to then inform the client beforehand, and you don't have a situation of he said, she said, and you cover yourself in ways. So
yeah, I think as you go through it, I mean, as an example, I had an audit up in Howick a couple of weeks ago, and it was a document in terms of the sale of a property. So now, as everybody knows, the PIRB certificate was not designed, for the sale of a property. But what we do have is actually as a home checklist. And I've got to say, it was an absolute pleasure, to go to site with that document, because the plumber had basically gone through, from the water meter, the explanations in terms of that. So again, the client got a full report in terms of the state of the plumbing and those critical items of safety, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I think the same thing applies when we're, as a compliance auditor, when you receive this, you already go through and tick the boxes. I mean, some individuals not exactly 100% perfect, but it's a learning curve for everybody. And I think what it is for us is to just try and make the job of the plumber and the admin staff of the plumbing company that much easier in terms of doing your work. There's nothing worse than having a piece of paper with a no R1 lagging or TP, not discharging correctly or whatever, without that explanation. And sometimes as a compliance auditor, when you go to site, although we don't like to engage with the consumer on these things, because we'd rather go back to the plumber and then we can do that. But sometimes they'll ask you those questions and they'll be rather, how can I put it, bombastic in terms of trying to figure out what's wrong. Maybe there's an underlying thing with the plumber or whatever the case may be. But again, when you explain to them those items that were on the non-compliance notice in such a way, they actually look at it and say, geez, if I'd known that, I would have got it done, or I would have asked the plumber for a quote, or I can't do it this week, but I would have done it next week. So again, it's not going to be every single job that you do, but it doesn't really matter. You are doing this and you're doing it correctly, and if you promote yourself and you do it in the correct way, then it is going to add to your bottom line in terms of understanding the concept, and they are aware of it. And I've got to be honest, some of the clients where there's been a very detailed non-compliance notice has been provided have, asked the plumbers. Yes, it's not covered by the insurance company, but, it needs to be done. So you do have those people out there that will upgrade and do it. We just got to be able to give them the opportunity and give them the correct information and make sure that it's done in the correct way. So that's it.
Maybe just also throw something in there, Steve, is what we just need to remember is that, guys, all of this is pointing to, in my opinion, to two things. In terms of the Water Services Act, it says, and that's a law that says these installations needs to comply with the SANS codes. That's number one. Number two is the Consumer Protection Act, where we need to inform the client in a language that he understands. So I think, these documents that we have created actually connects to both those points. And what we need to understand in terms of the Water Services Act, there is nothing in the regulation that compels the plumber to upgrade the system or to make it compliant. What we do have in the regulation is a responsibility that's being placed on the plumber or the installer to notify the owner or the consumer in writing. And that is where this becomes very important, is that you have got a responsibility to inform the client. And one of the ways to inform the client is to use this document and to use the consumer guide to help you to explain what does it mean. And I think that's where this becomes very important, and it will be a very good guide for you to assist you to be able to do that. What we've also, sorry, Steve.
Yeah, I think clearly, just going back to that point, is that I've also had plumbers phone me and say that they've stopped doing geysers because, for them to upgrade it to be fully compliant, they blow themselves out of the water, or they, they can't do it, for the insurance rates, whatever the case may be. And you're quite correct, Jerry. It does not say in the standards that you will upgrade every geyser installation. The requirement within the standard of 10254 is that you must advise the consumer in writing. That is what you are tied to. So if anything ever went wrong there, it wasn't about the upgrading. It was basically, did you advise the consumer? And this is nothing new. I've said it before. When we send our vehicles in for a service and they do that 100-point check, yes, they're doing it. Why do they do it? Because it advises you of certain aspects of your motor vehicle that you need to, maybe spend some money on in the future or whatever. And what does that do? It basically says, well, you maybe going to get another booking, or they're going to sell a couple of hours, because that's really the motor mechanics, the plumbers, the architects, lawyers, we sell hours. And that's really what we in the business of, is selling hours. So if we're doing this and we do it in the correct manner, and you get 1 in 10, upgrades, well, great. I mean, it's 1 in 10 that you wouldn't have had before had you not done it. And I think that, all too often when I receive the complaints, we deal with the complaints. The first thing that comes from the consumer is, well, he's the professional. I'm not the professional. Why wasn't I advised of this? Why? And it's always great retrospectively to say, well, I would have done it. They may not have. But once they've been given the opportunity and the doors open for them to have a go at somebody, then they come in and they play the, well, you're the professional, and what do I know? I would have done it because of the risks. But it's just about covering ourselves and making sure that we do things correctly. We are professional, and we need to act accordingly and educate our staff. And I think it's an item that, we've seen it, Lorraine, Philly, myself, all of the team, we see it where this information is not being, brought down to the installer, the guy who's actually on the ground. Are we teaching him this document? Are we having that explanation with him? And, doing that training, as we've done in KZN, where we've taken the installers and we break these things down so that the installers can actually understand and be empowered in terms of being confident standing in front of that consumer. Because there's nothing worse. We all like that. If you've got somebody with a security gate or whatever, you ask a question and he fumbles, your confidence in that individual is just no longer there because he couldn't answer your question. So the better we are and the better understanding we have of the documents, the requirements, the responsibilities, just empowers us, to be able to be comfortable with the client where they say, well, this guy answered all my questions and I think we need to run with this. So again, there's a whole big mechanism behind this document in terms of making sure that from the top down, the bottom up, that we actually empower people.
I think also, Steve, to connect to that is I know, and I'm sure most of you will acknowledge that you do get clients that phone you to say, we've had this installation done, but we're not sure. Can you come and have a look and tell us what's wrong? So this document then is the perfect document to use in that situation to assist you, to guide the client, and also to look at the points that might be of concern, so that you can actually put it in writing and say, this is what I've seen, which will take away this thing of you saying things because you want to try and get the work away from me type of argument that we find all the time. So I think, once again, that will also help you in that instance, because this points to the standards and the regulations. It's not a personal opinion. So, and I think that is one of the important things that you guys need to also understand is use this document so that you can take that argument away where the guy says, but yeah, you are my competition. That's why you are saying these things. And I think that will also bridge that gap and support you to do that. And then a last point from me is it obviously points to professionalism. So, if you can substantiate what you say in terms of the standard, and by using this document, you will portray that you are a professional, qualified person, and that you are actually, what you're talking about. So that to me is the bottom line.
But I think even if you've been called out to do a quotation, and you're quoting on that geyser, and
Yes.
your quotation includes this document. Again,
Yes.
You're one step up above. I mean, we used to have it with ours. We used to have nice fancy folders because you stood away from the others that had a white envelope and a one pager. So again, it was that presentation and how it came across, and you just got to look at it. We're all customers and we all look at things differently. But I think that when you call for a quote for a geyser, I mean, this non-compliance notice is a once-off. You print it as many times as you like. But if you're doing that quotation and you itemize those and you include that in your quotation with the explanation, what it then does is ask the question of the others that have been passing that job, for example, as to why haven't they picked this up, or why haven't they done this, or whatever. So again, in the times of business, it's about just adding a little bit more meat to the pie, so that, and you stand out from the rest, and you're seen to be, professional in all aspects of what you're doing.
Once again, thank you for attending, and we hope that this document will help you, support you going forward, and help you to be more professional, give the information when it's needed, and let's do the right thing for the right reasons, and stay safe, wear your masks, do what you need to do, and good luck from me. Cheers.